welcome to St Mary's. It's nice to see you all, and it's nice to see some younger children here than we normally get every day during the week. But I think you're in for a fun afternoon, so I hope you're all going to enjoy it. And there'll be lots of different things going on, and I'll leave Liz to say more about that. I'm Mike Connor, I'm the chairman of the Friends of St Mary's, and we raise monies as best we can to help with the church with some of the work that needs doing, like the restoration of the roof and the organ appeal that we've helped with in the past, and the bell tower. So we raise as much money as we possibly can so that we can carry on and do this work. And in the last 20 years, we've contributed £81,000 towards the maintenance of the church and to keep it going. And it's a very difficult job to get the money in, but thank you for all coming this afternoon, because you're going to contribute towards that by buying your tickets for this afternoon. We have other events planned for the year. We have a concert, a guitar concert in June, and we rely, of course, on a lot of donors to give us money so that we can contribute towards the various bits and pieces. As you can see over here, we've got some buckets to catch the raindrops. Unfortunately, anything to do with churches of a certain age costs a heck of a lot of money, and we're shortly going to help towards the expected cost of somewhere around about £100,000 to repair the roof yet again. So that's a little bit of background as to who we are and what we're trying to do. I've left some forms on the back table at the entrance where you came in through. If anyone wants to pick up a form and contribute to us, we'd be very grateful. So I think that's all I need to do as a parish announcement about the Friends of St Mary's. And I'd now like to hand over to Liz Rose, and Liz, I'll leave it to you now.
Hello, it's lovely to see so many of you here and so many children. I first came to Bampton in 1972, so I think after nearly 51 years I'm just about a local. But you may never have known that my father was Dick King-Smith. And in fact in 72 he'd not even had anything published by that. It started in 78, at age 56 his first book was published. This is my brother Giles and my middle granddaughter Josie, who you'll find out has finished an unfinished manuscript of Dad's, and there are copies to be bought later on. So I hope you enjoyed what we have on offer with some questions, some readings, some presentations, a bit about Dad's life. And I hope you will enjoy this afternoon, and I'll hand over to Giles, who's going to do the honours with the presentation.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
A bit too much, perhaps. As quiet as I can. I'm Giles King-Smith. I'm Dick's. My dad, Dick King-Smith, as you'll see from the next slide, was born on March the 27th, 1922. So we're almost at the end of his centenary year. And here you can see the introductory page, which you'll find on his website, with some of his best-known characters there in the picture with him. So here he is, author of The Sheep Pig, best known. So here he is, author of The Sheep Pig, best known for the film Babe, Queen's Nose, which was a long-running television series in the 90s, The Water Horse, also made into a feature film, The Hodgehag, which is always a massive favourite with children, and many other books. Was born in Bampton, Gloucestershire on that date. Here he is, as a little boy with his bike on the left. And on the right, I don't think he looks very happy, does he? Can you see there? Will he come out so you can see? Or sit in the row in front if you want to? I think he looks a little miserable. And they've just been told he's about to be sent away to boarding school. This is where they lived, the village of Bampton, And the reason I show this picture is that the buildings you can see and the chimney there belonged to the Golden Valley paper mill, which was run by the Kingsmith family, producing high quality writing paper, because people liked that sort of thing in those days. Here we are with his parents and his grandparents, maybe about 1948, just after the Second World War. They don't make it like that anymore, do they? People all clothes. My dad grew up as someone who was crazy about animals. He always kept animals, especially small things, rabbits, guinea pigs, budgerigars. He loved animals, as I'm sure some of you do. He wasn't that keen on girls, as boys in their teenage years sometimes aren't. And he met my mum. He met her at a drinks party that their parents had invited to. And I kind of picture the scene that he wanted to keep away from, oh, there's that girl over there, not that interested in girls. Until eventually they got talking, and he discovered that she also bred budgerigars. So that's a really good introduction. They both had an interest in animals, they got on really well, and in due course, they got married. There they are on the left, my dad in his uniform. They got married in 1943, and soon after that he was off to the war. There he is looking very handsome, this time looking quite happy on the right-hand side. Wartime for him ended when he was very seriously wounded by a German grenade in Italy in 1944, something like that, and invalided out of the army. Before the war, his dad asked him, what do you want to do? Do you want to go to university, or do you want to be a farmer? And my dad had said, I imagine without any hesitation, I would be a farmer. Forget university. Farming's for me. So after the war, once he'd recovered from his injuries, he became an apprentice farmer, a farm in Wiltshire. Oh, here we are, sorry. Here's the family. My mum, my dad. Who's that second from the left with her pigtails? Is she in the room today? And next to her, my oldest sister Julia. And who's that sweet little boy on the left side there? Oh, time flies. He became a farmer. And I don't think he knew he was going to write about pigs, but he did like pigs. This is his favourite ball, Monty, a magnificent animal. About 10 foot long, nose to tail. I would think absolutely huge, lovely temperament. They kept pigs at that point and really enjoyed it. Here he is on his tractor. They don't make them like that anymore either, do they? And he loved farming, but the truth is, as he was good with the animals, he was good on the farm, he was pretty useless with money. And as a small tenant farmer, you needed to make the books balance. And so sadly in 1967, we left our farm, we had to sell off all the farm equipment. I was 14 at the time. It's a very sad thing when you have to leave your home at any point. And in particular with this, we had an auction. In order to make a bit of money, we had to sell off all the farm equipment. So there I was wandering around as all these strangers came and bought the farm equipment in order to give us a bit of money to go on to the next stage in life. And we didn't know what that was going to be. Friends gave us places to stay and gave my dad jobs, which he was not very well equipped for, until in 1972 he trained to be a primary school teacher. Oh, and first, the reason this comes at this point is because it was something which gave a hint of what was lying ahead. Before he ever thought he was going to be a full-time writer, he was already writing little bits and pieces that went in magazines, and he wrote a series of poems about animals based on the letters of the alphabet, called Alphabeasts. And some of them were illustrated by an almost equally unknown illustrator called Quentin Blake. And we had these pictures of the illustrations around our house. Well, that's nice. He's had a few little poems published, Quentin Blake's done the illustrations. He's never going to come to anything. Little do we know what will happen 20 years later. So this is a little hint of what's going to happen later on. And I'm going to read you a little bit from Alphabeasts, a couple of the poems, funny poems for the letters of the alphabet. The common snapping turtle likes to lie in wait beneath the surface of the pool. An unsuspecting duck that paddles by will vanish in a flash, unlucky fool. Beware the common snapping turtle snap, and do not swim, but stay up on the land. Though fingers satisfy a little chap, the larger ones prefer to take your hand. And then, R is for rhino. Now you know and I know, the African rhino is truculent to a degree. But I know, do you know, the rhino will do no harm if you leave the thing be. They pulverise passers who treat them, alas, as a suitable butt for a prank. So do not incite one, or offer to fight one, unless you're driving a tank. So here they are, at home in their cottage. 2 years later on with one of their dogs. He became a primary school teacher. Still, at this point, no real thought about writing books for children. Until an idea came to him. He said later he'd been thinking about this idea for 20 years. Some of you will have heard of the dam busters. In the Second World War, the dam busters, it was a very ingenious way of dropping bombs on German dams from planes. Well, he wrote a book called The Fox Busters. It was about a race of chickens who were fed up with foxes attacking them and killing their chicks. And they learned to fly and to lay very hard-boiled eggs from a height, which then landed on the foxes and drove them away. Absolutely bonkers idea. But there we are. This is the school he taught at, Farnborough Primary School. Here he is, as a teacher, reading his first book to a group of pupils, The Fox Busters, published in 1978. As Liz said, he was 56 years old. So, you know, if you're getting on a bit, like me, don't worry, a second career is possible for everyone. And here he is, after he'd given up teaching to become a full-time writer, coming back with copies of his most famous book, The Sheep Pig. Here's 2 copies of the covers of the Fox Busters. The one on the left is the original, the one on the right is the new edition. Then the second book, Daddy Dogfoot, retitled for the American market, Pigs Might Fly. It's a really good book if you haven't read it. The first of his big books. And then The Sheep Pig. With beautiful illustrations by Mary Rayner, who died a couple of weeks ago, sadly. And then the new, slightly more cartoonish cover for the new edition. And The Sheep Pig, as you know, was made into the film of Babe. Now, I'm going to hand over to Liz. I haven't got a slide for this, but one of his most popular series of books is called the Sophie books. Some of you might have come across them. They're about a little girl who's very determined, who wants to be a lady farmer, whose most treasured possessions are her animals, some of them very, very small, and her twin brothers Matthew and Mark. So over to Liz.
I used to think that, can you hear me, everybody?
Yeah.
I used to think that the Sophie books, there were a set of 6. This is the first one, called Sophie's Snail. Sophie is only 4 in this book. And I used to think Sophie was based on me. But I gathered from Dad it was based on my mum. I thought it was based on me because I was mad about animals, and if you met me on a muddy, wet afternoon on the farm in my Wellingtons with my knitted jersey with my name on the front, you're quite likely to see a mouse, nose, whiskers and ears coming out of the end of my sleeve or up round my neck. But anyway, Sophie was based on my mum and her love of animals. Sophie lives with her mum and dad. She has twin brothers called Matthew and Mark, who quite often wear the same clothes, quite often finish each other's sentences, and are football mad. Sophie is mad about animals. She wants to be a farmer, and she has a money box in which she's collecting money for the farm that she wants to buy. But Sophie has not been to school yet, so the label on her money box, which I feel sure must have been a piggy bank, the label on her money box says farm money, and money is spelled M-U-N-N-Y, which is not quite right. Does anybody here know how to spell money?
M-O-N-N-Y.
Right. Anyway, Matthew and Mark have each other to play with. Sophie does not have a little friend to play with, and her mum is a bit worried about that. And so I'm going to read you the chapter about when Sophie meets Dawn, which is quite funny. "What shall we do this morning, Matthew?" said Mark. "I know," said Matthew. "I know what you're going to say," said Mark. "Let's go and play football," they said. "Mum," they shouted, "we're going out to play football." "Well, take Sophie with you. She doesn't much like football." "You never ask her. Go and ask her." Now, but when they found Sophie and asked her, she said she was too busy. So they went without her. A little later, Sophie's mother went out into the garden and found Sophie plodding around, peering into the flower beds as though searching for something. She was carrying a small yellow bucket. "Why didn't you go with the twins?" her mother said. "Too busy," grunted Sophie. She bent down and picked up a spent matchstick. That's a matchstick that's been used. And she put it in her yellow bucket. "Oh, you are a good girl," Sophie said to her mother, "picking up Daddy's old matchsticks. Every time he smokes his pipe, he uses dozens of matches to hit the wretched thing alight, and then he chucks the used ones all over the garden. But wouldn't you rather be playing with the others than just picking up matchsticks?" "I am not just picking up matchsticks," said Sophie severely. "I am collecting food for all of my animals." Sophie's mother went back into the house to do her housework, shaking her head. She's going to be a proper loner, she thought, collecting food for her animals indeed. Who ever heard of animals eating wood? She lives in a world of her own. It's not good for her. I wish there was a girl of her own age for her to play with. A couple of weeks later, Sophie's mother's wish was granted. A nearby house changed hands, and the new people who moved in had a little girl who looked to be just about Sophie's age. A pretty little girl with golden hair done in bunches. Sophie's mother lost no time in making contact. "Sophie," she said one morning, "those new people down the road have got a little girl." "I know. I've seen her. She wears frocks." Sophie did not approve of frocks. "She's called Dawn," said her mother. "Yuck!" said Sophie. She thrust her hands into the pockets of her old jeans and stumped off, shoulders hunched, the very picture of disapproval. "I've asked them round this morning," her mother called after her. She turned to the twins. "You three children can play with Dawn while we're having coffee," she said. "What time are they coming?" said Matthew. 11 o'clock. "We've got a football match," said Mark. "Kick off 10:30 sharp," they said together. Dawn was wearing a green dress with bows on it, and long white socks, and smart red shoes. Her bunches were tied with green ribbon. She carried a little toy pony. Dawn's mother raised her eyebrows just a bit as Sophie was called up to be introduced. Sophie was wearing an old blue jersey with her name written on it, and her old jeans, and her muddy wellies. Her dark hair looked as though she'd come through a hedge backwards, and she carried a yellow bucket. "Sophie," said her mother, "this is Dawn." Dawn held out her toy pony. It was a bright pink pony with a long silvery mane and tail. It even had long silvery nylon eyelashes. "This is Twinkle-Toes," she said. "He's my special favourite, but you can play with him if you like." Sophie stared woodenly at Twinkle-Toes. It was plain from her expression that she did not approve of pink ponies. "Yes, off you go and play," said Sophie's mother. "And Sophie, you look after Dawn. There's a good girl." Sophie stumped off, with Dawn prancing behind, crying, "Gee up, Twinkle-Toes! Gee up, Twinkle-Toes!" They nearest flower bed and Sophie began to hunt about. "What are you looking for, Sophie?" asked Dawn. "Matchsticks," said Sophie shortly. She found a couple and put them in her bucket. "Ugh," said Dawn, wrinkling her nose. "Nasty old matchsticks. Whatever do you want them for?" "To feed my animals on," said Sophie. Dawn laughed. "You are silly, Sophie," she said. "Matchsticks are made of wood. Animals don't eat wood." "Mine do," said Sophie. "Isn't she silly, Twinkle Toes?" said Dawn to her pony. "You wouldn't eat dirty old matchsticks, would you? You like nice grass." And she pulled some from the lawn and held them against the pink muzzle. "You're just pretending to feed it," said Sophie scornfully. "My animals are real, I'll show you." At the bottom of the garden was an old potting shed. Outside it, too large to fit on the shelves, stood several very big flower pots upside down. Carefully, Sophie tipped one of the big pots over. Underneath it, on a bed of spent matchsticks, was a great army of woodlice. Does anybody know what a woodlouse is? What a woodlouse is? What's a woodlouse?
I like the bend.
It is. It's a little grey sort of beetle, although it's a crustacean, which is crab family. It has 7 pairs of legs and it sort of has an armoured body, and if it's frightened, it rolls up. So this is what Sophie has under her flower pot. "Good morning, my dear," said Sophie to the woodlice. "Here's 2 more nice juicy matchsticks for you." "Yep," said Dawn, clasping Twinkletoes closely to her. "Horrible, dirty, creepy crawlies." At that moment, a large woodlouse detached itself from the mass and began to walk towards Dawn's feet. Very deliberately, Dawn placed one of her smart red shoes on it and squashed it flat. The yells from the bottom of the garden brought both mothers running. A dramatic scene met their eyes. In front of the potting shed, a small, stocky figure was jumping solemnly up and down, wellies together, on what had once been a bright pink pony with a silvery mane and tail, but was now a dirty, squashed lump. "Sophie!" cried Sophie's mother. "Dawn, darling!" cried Dawn's mother. "Wah!" cried Dawn. Sophie gave one final stamp on the battered body of Twinkletoes and plodded off. "Where's Sophie?" asked the twins when they came back from their football game. "She's in her room. She has been extremely naughty." "What did she do?" "Never you mind." "Where's Sophie?" asked her father when he came back from work. "She's in her room. She's been extremely naughty." "What did she do?" "She completely ruined a toy belonging to the child of those new people down the road. Jumped on it, squashed it." "Why did she do that?" "I don't know. I've asked her, but she won't answer." "She'll answer me," Sophie's father said. A few minutes later he came back. "She won't," he said. Even before Dawn's mother had said a frosty goodbye and taken her yelling daughter away, Sophie had gone straight to her room. She judged it better to go to her room than to be sent there. She sat on the side of her bed, thinking sadly of the death of the woodlouse. After a while, the sad thoughts became glad ones. Dawn had paid for it. She knew she'd have to pay too out of her farm money, but it would be worth it. At bedtime, the twins looked in on Sophie. They sat on the end of her bed, Matthew on one side, Mark on the other. "What did you do?" they said. "I busted Dawn's toy," said Sophie. "I jumped on it." "Why?" said Mark. "She squashed one of my woodlouses," said Sophie. "Squashed it dead?" said Matthew. "Yes!" "What a beastly girl," they said. And the toy was a horrible pink pony called Twinkletoes. Yuck, they said. You were right to jump on it, said Matthew. You should have jumped on her too, said Mark. Did you tell Mum and Dad what she did, they asked. No, said Sophie. They'd only say, I'm sure she didn't mean to, or it was only a woodlouse after all. A little later, Sophie's mother and father came in. They sat on the end of Sophie's bed, one on each side. You know, Sophie, said her father, you simply cannot go around breaking other children's toys. I can, said Sophie, and I just have. You'll have to say you're sorry, said her mother. I can't, said Sophie. I'm not, and I won't. Look, Sophie, they said, we know what Dawn did. The boys have told us. Sophie waited. I'm sure she didn't mean to, said her mother. It was only a woodlouse after all, said her father.
So if you haven't come across the Sophie books yet, go and find them. Dick Kingsmith wrote many other books, apart from the well-known ones. About 130 of them all. Some of them for older children, like The Crow Star, The Godhanger. They're quite sad, quite dark in places. You need to be maybe 10 or 11 to read these. Otherwise it could be tears at bedtime, and we don't want that. But some picture books, Farmer Mama Forgets, and H. Prince, both of them illustrated by the wonderful Martin Honeysett. And then he had an unlikely new career, already well-known children's author. He then became a children's TV presenter on a show called Rubber Duck Tub, on ITV on a Saturday morning. There he would be visiting farms. Those weren't his pigs he was just visiting, but going with his miniature Dachshund Dodo. And here is Frank, the rabbit, the locked rabbit with ears so long that they used to drag him on the ground. Sometimes my dad would tie them up behind his head. We're going to hear quite a lot more about rabbits in a moment. A firm favourite, Hodgegate, 3 different colours. Queen's Nose, 2 different covers. You can see on the right hand side the cover brought out to coincide with the ITV series. 2 new editions of really good books by Dick. Magnus Powermouse and Harry's Mad. And one more film to look out. If you haven't seen it already, The Water Horse, based on my dad's book about the Loch Ness Monster. It's a really good film as well. But he didn't only write about animals. He wrote about humans as well. And in particular, one of the family's favourite books is called Friends and Brothers. I'm going to read a little bit from it now. It's about my oldest sister Juliet's sons, Will and Charlie, and the things they got up to. They were kind of friends, but they spent an awful lot of time arguing and fighting. And so my dad collected some of their stories and wrote them down. This one is for anybody who's struggled to get to sleep at night at any point. It's called Try Counting Sheep. Is there anybody here who finds it hard to get to sleep at night? Thank you for being so honest. And you as well. Because of him or not? No. No. And do you find it hard to get to sleep at night? Sometimes, yes, I do as well. Anybody else find it hard to get to sleep? Would you just go off? You do as well? Do you ever count sheep or not? No, well, this is about counting something other than sheep in the end. Try counting sheep. William and Charlie's mother closed the book. Right, she said. That was a long story. Down to bed. Both of you straight to sleep. William settled himself in a bottom bunk and watched Charlie's skinny little legs climbing the ladder to the top bunk. Mum, he said in a moany voice, what is it, Will? How can I go straight to sleep? As soon as you're out of the room, Charlie will start talking. He talks for hours. He does not care. I have to answer him. He's always asking me questions. It's because my brain is so busy, said Charlie from the top bunk. I can't get to sleep because I'm busy thinking things. Try counting sheep, Charlie, said his mother. Just imagine a flock of sheep in a field. One of them finds a hole in the hedge and hops through it, then another one follows, and another, and another.
Wow.
That's 4 sheep, said Charlie. You don't stop there, Charles, said William scornfully. You go on counting till all the sheep have gone through the hedge. Well, how many sheep are there in the field? Asked Charlie. As many as it takes to send you to sleep. Good night now, sleep tight. Mind the fleas don't bite. Charlie waited till the sound of her footsteps going downstairs had died away. And then he said,
Well,
what? Why do I have to count sheep? Sheep are boring. I can count 3. Good night. Oh, God, anything you like, just shut up, that's all. Instead of sheep hopping through a hedge, I can count fleas hopping down from my bunk into yours, couldn't I? William began to scratch. You haven't got fleas, have you? He said. No, said Charlie, but I haven't got sheep either. Don't be silly, Charlie, said William. You don't have to have the things you're counting. Just imagine them. You can count anything you like. So I could count fleas. William scratched again. No, not fleas, he said. But you just said, oh, shut up, Charlie. I want to go to sleep. Just think of some other kind of animal and count them. What kind? William sighed. I'd better suggest something. He thought he was never even going to start counting. He suddenly remembered a programme on the television about African animals. Great herds of them, stretching for miles and miles, plodding along, one behind the other, never ending. Try counting wildebeests, he said. What beasts? Wildebeests, said William. What's a wildebeest, Will? They're sort of like a horse, the body is, but they've got heads more like a cow, with horns and a beard. The daddy ones have beards, do they? Said Charlie. The mummies have beards too. The mummies can't have beards. Mummy hasn't got a beard. Oh, she isn't a wildebeest, is she? If she was, said Charlie, we'd be little wildebeests. At least you would, Will. You'd be a wildebeest. But why, what would you be? I'd be a Charlie beast. Just stop it, you're silly. Charles, said William angrily, try counting wildebeests. I want to go to sleep. I'm tired.
Did you stay here?
For a few minutes there was silence. Then Charlie's face appeared upside down as he hung over the edge of the bunk. Will, he said, how can I count wildebeests if I don't know what they look like? William, who'd been lying on his back, suddenly turned on his tummy and began to punch his pillow furiously with both fists. Then he got out of bed and switched on the light, took an animal book from the bookshelf, found a picture of a wildebeest and showed it in silence to his younger brother. How's that? Said Charlie. That's a canoe. They're a safe animal, he said. He closed the book, put it back on the shelf, turned out the light and got into bed again. He said in a careful, patient voice, just try counting them, Charles. Just imagine you're in Africa, watching a huge herd of wildebeests walking past, thousands and thousands and thousands of them. You're sitting there counting them, and the sun's blazing down, and you're getting very, very sleepy. At last, above his head, William heard Charlie beginning to count, quite slowly, quite quietly. 1, 10, 3. He'd reached 20. William's eyelids were just starting to droop. And suddenly Charlie said loudly and very fast indeed, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 20, 10. Charlie! Cried William, what are you doing? It's not my fault, Charlie. The wildebeests were walking quite slowly, and then they suddenly started to gallop. There must have been a lion about. Again there was silence for a while, and then Charlie's duvet came whizzing down past William's head. Charlie, he said, it's terribly hot in Africa. Charlie said, I'm thirsty, I'm going to get a drink. He came down the ladder from the top floor and went out to the bathroom. When he climbed back into bed again, he said, Will, now what? What comes after 99? 100, stupid. And then 200? No, of course not, you have to start again. 101, 102, said William. He pulled his duvet over his face and tried not to hear the steady murmur overhead as the count went on. Once more he had almost drifted off when Charlie said, Will? William didn't answer. If I keep quiet, he thought, perhaps he'll shut up. Will? What comes after a million? William sat up. "You can't have counted to 1,000,000, he said. "I haven't, not yet, I was just wondering." "Charlie," said William between his teeth, "go to sleep." "Can I stop counting?" "I suppose so." "Okay," said Charlie. For perhaps 5 minutes, William lay still, rigid, not moving a muscle. Above him all was quiet. Tensely he waited for the next "wheel." It didn't come. Carefully, very carefully, William slid from under his duvet, swung his legs onto the floor, slowly, silently climbed the ladder to the top bunk and peered into it. By the light from the open door, he could see the still figure of his brother. Thumb in mouth, Charlie D. Beast was fast asleep. William picked up Charlie's duvet, went up the ladder again, covered the sleeper up. What a kind, thoughtful big brother, a watcher might have felt, but the only thought in William's head was that Charlie might get cold and wake up and start up his endless questions. Thank goodness for wildebeests, William thought. As he settled down, he looked at his watch. It was 9:30. The room was beautifully silent. Only an occasional small snore floated down from above. I wonder how many he did count. He thought, I bet I wouldn't have to count as many as he did. It's just because he's small he had to count for so long. I bet I wouldn't need to count more than a dozen. He pictured in his mind a single wildebeest, starting at the back end with its long tail, top part like a cow's, lower part like a horse's, bushy whisk of hair, saw its hindquarters sloping up to the high crest of its shoulders, the thick mane hanging down on either side of its long neck that ended in a huge head too big for the body, with sharply curving horns, a great Roman nose, and a bearded chin. Wildebeest number 1, thought William. He began to count. 500 wildebeests had marched in single file past William before he realised he didn't feel in the least bit sleepy. Tired, yes, longing to go to sleep, but much more awake now than when he'd begun to count. Suddenly he realised it wasn't counting wildebeests that had sent Charlie to sleep. It was stopping counting them. Can I stop counting, he'd asked. And immediately he'd slept. William stopped counting. He looked at his watch. It was 10 o'clock. All around him now as he lay open-eyed were wildebeest noises. Everywhere he could hear their deep grunts, the rasping sound of their grazing, the swish of their tails as they struck flies from their flanks. He could hear the clash of horns as rival bulls met head to head, and the distant thunder of hooves as great herds raced about the African plain. Stopping counting didn't stop them coming. On and on, more and more, a great black, never-ending river of animals. Wearily, William looked at his watch. It was 11 o'clock. Wearily, he dragged himself out of bed and stumbled down the stairs. In the kitchen, his parents were washing up before going to bed. "Mum," said William in a moaning voice, "I can't go to sleep." "Isn't Charlie asleep, Will?" asked his mother. "Yes, ages ago." "I'll tell you the best thing to do, Will, shall I?" said his father. "What?" "Try counting sheep." Moving on. Audio books. New ones. A quiz. I don't think we've probably got time for this. We might come back to it later if people want to, but we want to get on to Josie a bit. Here we are. A new book was published last year. I'm going to ask Liz to introduce how it was found and then over to Josie.
About 6 years ago, a family was contacted by the National Museum of Cinema in Italy, which is based in Turin. They wanted to mount an exhibition about animals in films, and because of Babe, they got in touch with the family to ask if they'd got any memorabilia that we could contribute to be shown at the exhibition. We managed to get the animatronic Babe and various other bits, but they were very keen to have the manuscript. So up I went into our loft where I keep everything of Dad, because Dave and I have always acted as archivists. We have all his 130 plus books in paper and hardback, autographed up there, but also manuscripts. I found the manuscript of The Sheep Pig for sending to Turin, but I also found a half-finished manuscript. And it was about a rabbit with a very good sense of smell called Ambrose. But there was only one adventure in this manuscript. It seemed to stop this book after about 6 chapters. Dad had either run out of ideas for some more exciting things to happen, some more adventures for Ambrose, or he'd just put it aside and forgotten about it. So when the centenary was coming up, we thought, who can we get to complete this manuscript? And a fair few names were mentioned until we remembered Joe, I think, was still at uni at the time, but had already been having things published. He's the one member of the family who seems to be stepping quietly into Dad's footsteps as an author. So we asked Jo to complete the story, and she wrote another 50% of the book, which she's now going to tell you a bit more about.
I'm just going to move this microphone so I can go hands-free and see the screen. So, yes, I'm Josie. I'm Liz's granddaughter, one of Liz's granddaughters. That's me. That's me looking quite happy and chubby with my mum. And yeah, I'm here to tell you a little bit about Ambrose and read a chapter, although I think I've got a bit of a raw deal with the books you guys read from, because I think they're some of the funniest Dick Smith books, so it's a hard act to follow. But I'll read a chapter, and all you children, I hope you've been listening carefully, because there's going to be a little quiz afterwards, and then we're going to have time for questions as well. So I grew up in London until I was about 9, and then my parents decided to move us to the countryside, to the middle of nowhere, much to my alarm as a 9-year-old with lots of friends. And we moved to the west coast of Scotland, which I turned out to love in the end after initially being annoyed at being moved there. I went to Glasgow to go to university when I left school, and I studied English literature and creative writing. And then I got a job as an editor, editing science materials for kids after that. But in lockdown, I got an email from Giles and from Gran, and I got a new job, which happened to turn out to be writing this book, finishing off this book here, with help, of course, from Dick Smith. And you've heard all about Dick Smith, the farmer, the soldier, the teacher, and eventually the author. But to me, he was Grandpa Dick. And he passed away when I was 15, so I actually got a really long time to spend with him for a great grandparent. And I always say when people ask what he was like, that he's kind of exactly how you would expect him to be from his writing. He's really funny. He loved children, which is handy because he has a lot of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And my memories of him are really that picture that you saw a few slides back of him with Merle, my great-grandmother, in their cottage in Queen Charlton, in their garden with a dog or two, maybe some chickens, and the weeping willow in the garden. That's really my memories of him. He used to also like to take out his false teeth when us grandchildren were around to try and freak us out. That's sort of enduring memory I have of him. And as you've heard, he didn't start writing until he was 56, and then he was very prolific. He wrote 130 plus books in that time. But he was always very encouraging of me writing anything, and he helped me get my first poem published when I was about 8 in the Creative Writing magazine. And I grew up with his books really because I was born the year that Babe came out in the cinemas. So to me, he was always quite well known. And also when I was at primary school, it was around the time that the Queen's Nose was on telly, so that made me quite popular as well. But as you've heard, this new story about Ambrose came as a complete surprise to me. And initially I didn't think too much of it, I thought I would just give it a go. But it turned out to go quite well. And I think the best feedback I got was when I eventually showed it to Gran and to Giles and to my great aunt Julia, and you guys said you couldn't work out which bits he'd written and which bits I'd written. So I'll tell you a bit about that because it was quite an interesting thing to have to do. It's kind of like, I don't know if you guys have this in English class at school where you get an extract of a book and you have to carry it on in the style of the author. it felt quite like that, and I think I was well equipped to do that from growing up with his writing and from the kind of family humour we have that he originated, I suppose. So Ambrose is, in quintessential Dick Smith style, a rabbit, an animal with an extraordinary skill that he has to master and use in some way. He lives with his siblings, who are called Rolly, Archie and April. And one of the first things I knew that I wanted to do in this book, when it came to adding my own ending and my own twist on it, was to add Rolly as a character. And I think when I do the reading, you'll see that she's almost Sophie-like in her determination and doggedness and unwillingness to do things other people's way. So I knew I wanted to add another character like that. Ambrose is looked after by a little girl called Biddy, who loves him very dearly and is desperate to take him home to be her own pet, but her parents aren't so keen, and he really needs to prove himself. So, would you like to meet Ambrose?
Yeah.
There he is, an ordinary rabbit with an extraordinary sense of smell. Every day, Biddy visits Ambrose in his family's hutch, and when she learns of his incredible skill, she trains him to become a tracker rabbit. But when Biddy's family find themselves in real danger, can Ambrose's sensitive nose save the day? It's a very sweet rabbit. Ambrose's dad, Roland, is definitely modelled on Frank, who you heard about earlier with the long ears that needs to be tied up behind him. You're not going to hear from Roland in the extract I'm going to read, but he's a very funny character. And one that I think we realised when we looked at the manuscript had been used in other stories, which helped us work out kind of when the manuscript had been written. So now I'm going to read you a little bit of the story. So at this point in the story, Biddy has realised that Ambrose has this incredible skill and she wants to train him up to be a tracker rabbit, to track things. And coincidentally, as she's out training him up, Ambrose's rebellious and quite naughty little sister Rolly has escaped their hutch, and Ambrose has just seen her disappear down a mysterious hole in the orchard. And Ambrose and Rolly at this point are still quite young. Does anyone know what a young rabbit is called? They've got a special name. Do you know?
A bunny.
And that's a very good guess, but I think a bunny can be any age of rabbit. There's another word for a baby rabbit. Do one of you guys know what it is? I'll give you a clue. It's the same as the word for a baby cat.
Kitten.
Kitten, yes, very good, or a kit. So Rolly and Ambrose are only quite small at this point, and Rolly is the smallest in the litter, which is perhaps why she makes up for it with being so bolshy. So here we go. Inside the hole, the musky smell was even more pungent. Though Rolly's wild ancestors could have told her what it was quick enough, it meant nothing to her. True, she did not care for it. It was not at all nice. But it didn't spell danger to her. As Rolly progressed deeper, past several side tunnels, the smell became stronger and she sneezed loudly. "Bless you," said a voice behind her. Rolly spun round in surprise. There, silhouetted against the traces of light that filtered down from the world above, was a figure. A huge figure, it seemed to Rolly, perhaps 10 times her size, reddish in colour, with a long pointed nose and a pair of sharply pricked ears. The stink of it was overpowering. Rolly had a terrible realisation. She had never seen one of these animals before, but she'd certainly heard a lot about them. She sneezed a second time. "Achoo! Bless you," said the animal again. "I trust you haven't caught a cold. It does get drafty down here and there are problems with rising down. A cold can so easily lead to pneumonia, and it would be a shame to cut short so promising a young life, wouldn't it?" "I haven't got a cold," said Rolly indignantly. Then she remembered who she was talking to, so through gritted teeth she added, "I think some dust got up my nose. Thank you for asking." "What a nice little rabbit," said the creature. A bit on the small side, admittedly, but tender-hearted, that is to say, and polite into the bargain. In fact, you might be the politest, sweetest little rabbit I've ever met. And I've met a lot of rabbits in my time. Rolly tried not to scowl. She did not like to be patronised. "I'm a fox, you see," he continued, "and foxes are extremely fond of rabbits." "Fond of them?" Rolly replied, trying to stop her voice from quavering. "To eat," said the fox. Rolly had no need of any instincts from wild ancestors to tell her of her peril. At the fox's words, she turned and bolted, but almost immediately bumped her nose against a solid wall of earth. "Dead end," said the fox. Thoughts raced through Rolly's brain. This was exactly the danger her mother had warned her of. No matter how loud she squealed, which was what her wild ancestors' instincts told her to do, her family would not hear her. All she could do was fight for her life. She set her back against the earth wall. Suddenly, a voice cut through the darkness. "Get away from her!" The fox spun round, giving Rolly a full view of the owner of the voice. Ambrose! She had never been happier to see those madly fluttering nostrils and lopsided ears. "Another one," chuckled the fox. "This is turning out to be quite the family affair. Not as polite as your sister, are you? Get away from her, or what? Or you'll regret it. I'm not an ordinary rabbit, you know." "I can see that," said the fox. "Your ears don't match, your nose is twitching like you smelt a ghost, and you're wearing a collar like a dog. What kind of rabbit are you then?" "I," said Ambrose, "am a blood rabbit." And he gave the fiercest growl he could manage. Rolly held in a giggle. It was not the most intimidating display. "Are you indeed?" said the fox, sounding, Ambrose thought, rather impressed. "I'm rather impressed," said the fox. "I've no idea what a blood rabbit is, but I admire your pluck, I must say. Never met one like you before, or your sister for that matter. In fact, I think that this is the moment to set your minds at rest. Relax, take it easy. Today is your lucky day." Rolly, never one to mince her words, cut in. "Do you mean you're not going to eat us?" The fox gave a little sigh. "That's exactly what I mean," he said. "Why not?" In reply, the fox opened his jaws wide. Apart from the odd broken stump, there wasn't a tooth in his head. He shook it sadly. "Old age, young fellows, old age. Change and decay and all around I see, especially in my gnashes. My bark, I fear, is immeasurably worse than my bite. A great pity, for the very sight of you does make the mouth water, but I'm afraid I just couldn't manage to." "Manage to what?" Rolly demanded. "Chew you." "Oh," said Ambrose. "Oh, good. So unless blood rabbits eat foxes?" "Oh, they don't," said Ambrose. "We might as well be friends," finished the fox. "What's your name?" "Ambrose. And this is my sister Rolly." "Oh yeah," the fox smirked. "What's that short for?" "Casserole." "No! Mum and Dad thought I was a boy, so they named me Roland," Rolly said, matter-of-factly. "But I'm a girl, so now I'm Rolly." "How fascinating. I don't use my original name either, you know. My name's Nigel, but for some reason everyone uses my nickname." "What's that?" said Rolly. "Niffy," said the fox. "I can't think why." So that bit's quite a nice extract because it's got a lot of Dick's original writing in it, and then it's also got the character I added in and had to kind of edit in. So it's a good example, I think, of how the two pieces of writing kind of merge together. And now it's time for the quiz, so I hope you guys are ready. I've got high expectations, but I think you're going to do really well. The first round is all about animals. Okay, first for a true or false question. True or false, and you can put your hands up, anyone put their hands up. Pigs can't smell. Any ideas? True or false? What do you think?
They can.
And what do you think? You think true or false? Correct, it's false. Like Ambrose, pigs actually have a very good sense of smell. Okay, here's a multiple choice question. Which of these animals do you think Dick King-Smith did not ever keep on one of his farms? Is it A, tortoises? Is it B, llamas? Or is it C, pigs? Which one do you think he didn't ever keep? What do you think? Very good. That is correct. He never kept llamas. We know he kept pigs because they were his absolute favourite. And I'm told he also kept tortoises, which you two can confirm with me. And the last question is, what is the name for a baby rabbit? You can shout this one out at me, I think you all know.
Kitten!
Yeah. Okay, the next round is on Dick King-Smith, and the first question is for any maths whizzes out there. Can anyone remember or work out, because it would have been his 100th birthday last year, what year Dick King-Smith was born?
1922.
Do you have a guess?
1922.
That is incredible. How on earth did you know that? Very good. Very good. Okay, the next question is, can you name any of the jobs that Dick King-Smith had over the course of his life? Teaching, very good. Can anyone think of another one? He didn't illustrate his books, he just wrote them, but that's a good guess.
He should have done, because he was very good at drawing. All right, he didn't.
People often ask me if I illustrated this book, and I have to disappoint them and tell them no, I didn't.
Farmer.
Farmer, very good.
Soldier.
Soldier, excellent. Has that us covered all of them? Was that one more?
There are one or two others, but you wouldn't know what they were. Weird one.
Very good. Can anyone remember, we've mentioned this a couple of times, how many books Dick King-Smith wrote in his lifetime? Exactly, possibly over 130, very good. We try to be familiar with most of them as a family. That's one of the first things I did when I came to finish off the manuscript, was reread a lot of the books and try and work out exactly where this story would go on if Dick had managed to finish it on. And the last round is about Ambrose. So can anyone tell me what Ambrose's extraordinary talent is? You at the back. His sense of smell, exactly. He has a very powerful nose. Can you tell me how many siblings Ambrose has, and can you name any of them, or even one of them? April, that's a very good one. 3 siblings, yeah, and April's one of them. Can you remember any other of the names? We just heard all about one of them in that story. Oh, did you say one?
Yeah.
And there's one more, but you might have forgotten that one. Do you remember it? Archie.
Well done.
Very done. And can anyone tell me one animal that Ambrose does not like the smell of?
Fox.
Foxes. And why wouldn't he like the smell of foxes?
Because foxes eat rabbits.
Exactly. He's scared of them, so he doesn't want to smell them. Very good. Round of applause, you guys did very good. And that's about all from me. The paperback copy of Ambrose came out in the last few weeks. And we've got some copies over there that I will gladly sign if anyone would like to. And that's the end of my little bit. And I think I'm going to pass you back over to Liz.
Just a quickie about Wilfrid. My sister and I realised that one of Dad's soft toys as a child was a rabbit called Wilfrid. And he was in a very sad state of repair, even though he had been hung up in Dad's study and was a sort of muse all the time he was writing. By the time Dad had died and Wilfrid had been passed to grandchildren and possibly some great-grandchildren, he was much the worse for wear. So we got in touch with the repair shop. You have to fill in forms and tell them what the story is. And my sister Juliet, who's not here today, took Wilfrid down to the Weald and Downland Museum at Chichester, where they repaired him and gave him a second lease of life. and he's now back. I think he's in Devon with one of your grandchildren.
He's in Devon with us,
Yeah.
and due to an administrative error on my part, he can't be with us today. I've got to bring him.
He was going to bring him and surprise you by taking him out of a carrier bag, but Wilfred is still in Devon, sadly. But in much better repair. I think that's our end, is it not?
Just,
Yeah.
if we just go to our questions.
Oh, yes.
Time for questions. Any questions you've got at all. We're getting hungry, we're nearly ready for our tea and for the book signing. But we've got a few minutes for questions. Anything you really want to ask, adults as well as children, we'll do our best. Yes?
Did Quentin Blake do any further illustrations?
I don't think so, no. So Dad had various illustrators. Mary Renner did quite a few. And the latest one, who's done the new illustrations, is called Steph Laberis, and she's done all the new editions. So new editions are coming out of his existing books all the time. 40th anniversary edition of The Sheep Pig is on sale over there, and obviously Ambrose in paperback. Yes?
Is Josie going to write any more books?
That's a great question.
That
Over
is
to you.
really good.
Did you hear that question? Is Josie going to write any more books?
I can't officially confirm or deny that.
That's no
I would
comment.
very much like to.
It's a bit like those cop shows where they're sitting and the police are interrogating them and they just say no comment to every question. It's a bit like that.
Unfortunately, there aren't any more unfinished manuscripts lying around, so
She's on her own.
it would be all on me this time.
She's on her own.
But yeah, fingers crossed, watch this space, is what all I'll say.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Any more questions? Grown-ups? Anybody? Anything at all? Yes. No, you go first, sir, and then we'll come back.
What regiment was he in?
He was in the Grenadier Guards. Thank you. That's an easy one to answer. Thank goodness for that. Yes.
How many books did he
Did he sell? He's sold many millions of books.
15 million.
Something like 15 million. And these books have been translated into 37 languages. Did you want another very quick quiz? Can you bear it? Very, very quick. Yeah. Let's go back. It'll take a couple, and adults, you can join in as well. Let's go back, because I left this out.
5 minutes.
Yeah, I know that the time is short, but it's such a good one, because it shows you, there you go, lots of different languages. Can you tell me from the top left what that book is? And what the language is that it's in? Adults as well, yes. French, good. What's the book called?
I think
Yes.
Granny Prompty.
Is it Harry's Man?
It's Harry's Man, and the pun doesn't translate into French, of course, because the parrot's called Madison. It's not that Harry is mad, but in French it's Harry est fou. So just below that, you all know what book that is, hopefully. It is, yes, The Sheep Pig, well done. Any idea, can you see it says, Schwein gehabt Knirps. Any idea of the language? Did my best? Yes. Excellent work, yes. And to the right of that, a guess of the language first. You should all get the book because you've read from it. Yes. Very close, but not quite. Yes. Japanese, and the book is, the character is Woodlouse Girl. Sophie, excellent. In the middle, I don't expect you to get this language, but the film was made of this book. Can you remember the title of it? It's The Water Horse, yes. Any guesses? Guess the language. Come on now, go for it.
Come on, adults.
Come on.
Come on.
It's a language which every word seemingly ends in S. It's not Estonia, it's not Lithuania, it's Latvia. And to the right, the book is, of course, yes?
Hedgehog. Hodgehog.
The Hodghead. Got it right where I'm good. I'm going to give you this one in Turkish, you'll never get it. Top right, another East Asian language, not Chinese or Japanese. Any offers? Korean. And it is a mouse called Wolf. You might forget that one, it's a really good book. And to the bottom right, what's the book? It's the first one he ever wrote. It's called The Something Busters. Fox Busters. And the language, have a look, it's not far away from here. Dick Kingsmith, Emily Hughes, spelled that way at the bottom. What language could it be? Yes. Yes! Give yourself a huge round of applause, that was brilliant. We are at the end now. Thank you so much. You've been brilliant listeners, especially the children who took everything in all the way through. I'm just going to leave that there so you know where you can go to find out more about Dick King-Smith. We're going to break now for tea and cakes. Thank you so much for preparing them, and also books to buy and books to sign. Thank you.
Well, Liz, Giles and Josie, thank you so much for coming here this afternoon to give your presentation about your father's life, his background, his story, how he got into writing, and to congratulate you, Josie, on finishing it so seamlessly. It's very, very well done. On behalf of the Friends of St Mary's, I'd like to give you a little something. It is a bottle, it's liquid, and I hope the three of you can share it together. Thank you very much indeed. Do please come and have some tea, coffee, or whatever takes your fancy. Nothing alcoholic, unfortunately.